Hello and welcome to Open Source Knowledge. I'm Phil Svitek.
And I'm Ally Nasta.
And in our inaugural episode, we deep dive into the sometimes scary world of personal finance. In our part one, we speak to Chelsea Galicia, who is the head of the Financially Fit Foundation.
We get to talk about personal finances and how to make a budget and the right ways to actually track your money and where it's all going.
That's right. And Chelsea is a very dear friend of mine. I introduced her to Ally, and Ally was just completely taken aback by all this information. So we hope you absolutely enjoy and get some good takeaways from it. We're exploring the world of personal finance, and I'm intrigued by the title Financially Fit. So can you give us a little backstory on what that title means?
Yeah, let's talk about physical fitness because we know that better, right? We know that the effects of gravity and time are going to make you weaker and sort of like pull you downwards, right? So to combat that, you do exercise. You become physically fit so that you can stay healthy, strong, be able to move and such. So if we take that into money, the tendency of people is that they spend as much as, if not more than they make. So it's like gravity on your money. It comes in, it goes out. But it is a phenomenon that affects everybody, from college students to movie stars. The percentage of people, of Americans living paycheck to paycheck, meaning they have very little savings, was like 78%. And that includes people of all income levels. It included, at one point, 10% of millionaires. And so
crazy.
So in order to combat this tendency to spend everything that you make, you become financially fit.
I love that.
It is a very unique way to look at it. So under those terms, Ally and I would say are on different fitness levels. Just even this exploration, I have different questions than you through our journey. And yet, it's one of the interesting things, the deeper I get, the more confused I become.
Mm-hmm. It's designed to confuse you.
And it's kind of designed to not teach us either, because we go through life and then you wonder all these questions and you wonder why we didn't learn it in school.
Yes.
So what is the first step to becoming financially fit?
Well, first of all, understanding what personal finance is. Most of the time, people think of personal finance and they think of taxes and stock market. But personal finance is, what's the process you use to deal with your mail? What's the system you have in place to make sure you pay your bills on time? How is it that you know that your money went where you wanted it to go? All of this is personal finance, and it's much more important than anything we could talk about stock market related or tax related, although those are important too, and I'll go there with you. But starting at the really basic level is something that people overlook all the time. And we're in credit card debt as a society. We are stressed out about money. And so clearly we haven't learned enough of the foundation.
Yeah, something my dad told me once, which has always stuck with me in my head. He said, sometimes the bigger the paycheck, the bigger the bills. And it's crazy because when he was telling me that, it's always stuck every time, if I get a new job or something, I always think if you try to stay at that same level you were at that first job, you'll be fine if you continue through.
Right.
But if you don't and you just keep getting a nicer car and a nicer house, you're just at that same level.
It's called, I think, lifestyle inflation, where it just kind of keeps going up. And it feels like the natural thing. Oh, you got a raise, go get a car. But it seems so almost like second nature that nobody stops to question, wait, really? Is that what's good for me? I know that that's going to make me look, I don't know, cool or important or whatever, but the ability to stop and think about what is important to you, aside from all the cultural and, family pressure to live a certain lifestyle, is being financially fit, is breaking through or fighting off the forces that would have you spend money the way they want you to. Advertising, marketers, all of this stuff is what we need to build a resistance to so that we can make choices to spend based on our own values and principles and desires rather than what everybody else wants us to spend on.
It seems like there's a lot of definitions, right, that have to be determined, and they seem very fluid in terms of the individual. How does one begin to create those definitions, within a person's life?
Whatever definitions you use are less important than the system that you implement and that you understand it. We don't really need fancy tools to organize our mail and pay our bills and track our spending and come up with a budget and see money in a healthy way. All of that is much more important. That flow of a process, a system that you go through each and every month is more important than becoming familiar with all the financial lingo out there. It becomes really overwhelming and you feel like, I don't know this, I must be dumb, I should leave this subject behind and go back to watching reality TV because I just don't want to confront how little I know about what are all these terms that I hear about. And so I would not be afraid of them. Some of this industry is designed, built to intimidate you. So as much as you can, just don't let it.
Well, I know from our perspective, right, the term budget, whenever that gets thrown around, it might as well be a vampire, and everyone's like holding their cross for dear life to not let this word touch them.
Yes.
But Ally, what is your feeling about budgets? Because I'm curious then how you apply that with a system.
Right, because I feel like with budgets in particularly, you think of how much are my bills versus my paycheck, and can I take that entire amount and put it away? I think sometimes I think that when I don't think it needs to be that intense.
Right.
I would love to hear your point of view of what a budget should be. Should it be a certain percentage that you're putting in your savings every 2 weeks or however long you get your paycheck, or what? Because I think when I look at a budget, I think I need to see my bills and whatever's left over and just put that away because I freak out. I don't want to have what you're saying, like all this debt everywhere. It just kind of freaks me out a little.
Yeah. So here's the thing about budgets is that people are averse to them, I think, for a couple of reasons. First, budgeting feels like cutting out all the fun. That's what a budget has come to be associated with. Just be uber responsible, live as cheaply as you can, and save the rest and enjoy nothing in life. Is basically the feeling. That and or the sense that you're having to spend your money according to the way an expert tells you to. You read in a book, you should spend 30% of your income on housing and 15% on this and da-da-da-da, and then you create a budget. And your inner rebellious teen is like, F this. I worked for my money. I want to spend it the way I want to spend it. And who are these people to tell me how to spend it? And I actually agree with that. So I think that the approach to budgets has been all wrong. And that if you start with first, and people kind of have a hard time with this, first getting clear what's important to you. Maybe eating out is important to you because that's where you connect with friends and family the most. You got to think for yourself. What is it that you really want your money to go to?
It's interesting because, you've really put me on this notion, that a budget really is a value system.
Yeah.
And where you see so many couples and divorce over personal finance, what it really boils down to, it's not the money, it's they're debating their values without even knowing it.
Yes.
And that's what I found most intriguing.
Absolutely. Yeah, so it's hard to, reconcile your values with somebody else when you don't even really understand your own. There's no class about money in school. There's also no class about, what are your values. And the values thing is actually a big reason, a major contributor to why I think people are stressed out about money. Most people think that they're stressed out about money because they don't have enough of it. But I think the real reason they're stressed is because they can't spend it consistently with who they think they are. And that cognitive dissonance, where you're doing something differently from what you say you are or how you believe, causes anxiety and stress, maybe even on a subconscious level, that stresses us out, and we take it to mean that we need to make more money. But get clear about values. It's like, okay, how do you do that? I've read so many books that help me clarify. In traveling, that's helped me clarify my values. A lot of my values have been clarified when I step away from my comfort zone, so it's usually when I'm abroad. And I also incorporate what science has learned about money and happiness. Right? There's this area of science where people research the effects of money and happiness. And there's books about it, or if you prefer to see it visually, there's a great documentary called Happy, which goes around the world and sees how different people are happy. And so you can derive from there, okay, what I see that these people have in common is a sense of community. Right? It's not something that we really have a lot here. It doesn't seem to be a value. But it's a value in most of the places where people are happy. And it's also a value in the places where people live the longest. Have you ever heard of the blue zones? These are places in the world where people have a high chance, or there's a high number of them living to 100 and beyond. And one of the things that they have in common is a strong sense of community and belonging. So it's those kinds of things. Okay, you get clear on your values, and then you translate those values into how you spend your money. And then you create a budget from that. And so then your budget is a plan for how you're going to basically spend your way to happiness. You know, of course, you're going to spend some of that on savings, which doesn't immediately make sense. But if you look at it that way, that this is your own personal blueprint for your happiness path, isn't that a whole lot more exciting than, I got to cut out all the, makeup in my life?
Right.
It's just those things that we like to spend money on, but we know that we shouldn't.
What if it was someone that has already kind of gotten themselves in this deep, dark hole of finances, and they are in so much credit card debt? What can you tell them to not get overwhelmed in order to get out of that hole? They feel probably like there's nothing left to do, and they're just kind of stuck, and they're just going to keep going down. How do you get them out? And how do you help them realize there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and that they can build happiness with building this budget and getting themselves out?
So the first thing about how we get into debt is realizing that everything we do in life is the result of habits. I kind of have this like roadmap to success in my mind that begins with beliefs that lead to thoughts, or thoughts that lead to beliefs. And then those thoughts and beliefs lead to feelings. And those feelings inspire action. And you do those actions enough and you get habits, and those habits get you your results. So this debt is a result of habits. And if you just learn different, healthier habits, you'll have a different result. So knowing that another way is possible, and it's not even difficult, it's just another way, will hopefully give somebody the sense that, all right, I'm not just going to climb my way out of this, but I'm never going to be in this situation again. And then there is a system of how you organize your debts, from a list of all of them, from highest interest rate to lowest. Some people like to do it the reverse way, but the most financially efficient way is to pay the minimum balance on all the cards except the one with the highest interest rate. So you attack that one as much as you can, pay that one off, and then attack the next one while paying the minimum on the rest. Is generally the advice. Not for everybody, but for most people. And then it's seeing money differently, relating to it differently, understanding that you're probably you are at the whim of this tendency that we all have, and nobody made you aware of it, and nobody taught you how to fight it or become financially fit.
Let me ask you, Chelsea's been very instrumental in my growth. I will say that, and I will give her credit where credit is due.
Thank you. That's the best compliment ever.
But one thing we haven't, you and I haven't touched upon as of late, is I've employed a method of set it and forget it. And I want to get your perspective on it, because I've realized my weaknesses are such that I am not to be trusted. I am not. So if I create these automatic things of, before I even see the money, let alone touch the money, it goes into the places that I know it needs to go to, whether that is, for people it could be housing, it could be this, it could be my investments, it could be my savings, whatever. And then honestly, I'm at a place psychologically where what I'm left with, and I'm sure you guys won't love this term, but it's my fuck you money.
Okay.
And
I want to know more about what this means.
If that is your value in life, is to have that and live that, totally fine. I don't judge it at all. I love that you bring this up. This set it and forget it thing gets most people in trouble.
Oh boy.
We really love setting it and forgetting it. And then the problem is that we actually forget it. And that's how we forget to pay our bills on time. That's how we forget to keep track of where our money is going. And that's how we get totally, off the rails, and we wonder how we got there.
Phil, you're in trouble.
I'm so in trouble.
Except major exception. Except when it comes to savings. That is the time that I believe in set it and forget it. So at the beginning of the year, you come up with your budget. You decide how much is going to go to savings, and Phil's already sending stuff to investments. Fine. You figure out those percentages. You figure out what dollar amount that equals based on your income. And then, go ahead and set up automatic transfers of money from checking accounts to saving accounts or checking accounts to investment accounts. That's fine. Where I don't recommend the set it and forget it is on your regular bills, because then we don't look at them. We don't notice when companies make mistakes or when
they raise the fee.
Right, exactly. We're just blind to it, and so then we're not watching. See, here's the thing. We believe at the Financially Fit Foundation that money behaves like a person. People do not like to be ignored, right? If your friends ignored you, disrespected you, didn't care about you, just took you for granted, how long would you stick around?
I wouldn't be there for long.
Right. And money is the same way. You ignore it, you take it for granted, neglect it. It energetically acts the same way and will leave. So pay attention to your money. This doesn't mean that you have to sit there and unfold all your bills and make sure that it's all face up. And that's not what I mean. I mean you are mindful of the money that is in your bills, that is going out. Where is it going? I mean, that is the question. That is the first question of personal finance, which I probably should have said earlier. The first question of personal finance is, where is my money going? And the part about figuring out how to know where your money is going is the system that we teach. In order to know where your money is going, you have to have a system of receiving your mail, whether it's physical mail or email, to know what's in your bills, and then to hopefully pay that on time, and then to have a system where you track your spending so that you know where your money is going. If somebody tells you, I have no idea where my money is going, they are, might be a mean term, they are financially flabby. It is just, there is no way. I don't care how fancy their car is, how great their eyelashes are, the Louboutins. I don't care about any of that. I can guarantee you that if that person says, I don't really know where my money goes, they are on the edge of a nightmare. And so many people that you think are living it up and must have a lot of money actually don't. I mean, you talk to financial planners and accountants, and they'll all tell you, when somebody walks into my office and they are dressed in a fancy outfit, chances are they're going to be worse off than the guy who, comes in more modest attire. I don't know why that is. It just seems to be true. But that is a place to start. Where is my money going? So that leads to the next question, perhaps, is how do you track your spending? Is that all right if I go to track your spending? Okay, so this isn't exactly glamorous, but this is how I do it. I pay all of my day-to-day expenses with one credit card. So when I get that statement, I use that to help me track expenses. Now, some people at this point say, oh, well, but my credit card company automatically tells me where my money went. It tells me how much I spent in retail and how much I spent on this, that, and the other. Okay, fine. But that is not making you financially fit. Those aren't the categories that matter, retail or not. Like if you go to Target and it sticks that in retail, that doesn't tell you about where your money went.
Because there's food, there's clothing, there's
pharmacy needs, and
so having that breakdown makes you feel like you're doing well, but it really is pretty useless. Before you track your expenses, you've got to have spending categories, and this trips people up because they're like, I don't know which categories to have. There are so many ways that you can organize it. We have a set of recommended expense categories. Some will apply to some people, others to others, but there are some basic ones that apply to everybody, and they're pretty consistent with the tax code. And the reason for that is because my mom is an accountant, and she uses this system for both her personal and professional business stuff. And so we know that we're teaching people personal finance, and most of them want to apply it to business. So if we keep the systems pretty consistent, they'll be able to make that, not that transition, but they'll be able to get a little more complicated and keep up with it. So you have your categories, and then there's a list of your categories, food and fun and house and car, whatever. And next to each of those categories is a number. The number itself is pretty meaningless. It could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It could be A, B, C, D, E, F, G. It could be freaking emojis for all I care. It doesn't really matter. Just a way for you to have an identification for each category. So then I go through my credit card statement, and next to each purchase, I say, oh, look, that's Whole Foods. Okay, so what's my code for fun? Oh, it's 3. That gets a 3 right next to it. And so on and so forth. I go down the list that way.
By the way, I like the emoji idea because credit card fees would get the poop emoji. I'm just saying.
Exactly. So that's how I go about it. And then, some of the harder ones are if you get like Target. Well, hopefully you remember there's 2 ways to go about that. Target, you can look at the receipt and see like, oh, half of that was on clothes and half of that was on food, and so then you can break that down and put it in both. Or you can say, I know that I spent most of that on clothes, so even though I bought some other stuff for the house, I'm just going to put it all in my wardrobe. Depends on how precise you want to be. But that's what you do. You label them all, and then you go back through and you add up the dollar value, all the dollar values with a 1 next to them. That's your food, right? And then you go through and all the dollar values that have a 2 next to them, you add those together and you get whatever that category is, fun, let's say. And you go on like that, so on and so forth, until you know where all your money went. And then compare it to a standard that you have, because where my money went might work for me, but it might not work for you. And so the part about the budget, why that's so handy, is that you have laid out your standard, your values, your goals, and then you track your expenses, and it's very easy. This is how much I want to spend every month on food, and this is how much I spent. Okay. I'm on track or I'm not on track. Now, a lot of people hate budgets because they feel bad about themselves if they go over. But here's the thing, you don't have to. If you go over your budget 1 month, then you just say, oh, okay, well then next month I'm gonna take it easier. And you just make slight tweaks so that you eventually stay within your budget. It's more emotionally, consistent and easy and less stressful to spend your money knowing I have allocated this money for clothes. So I don't need to argue with myself. Oh, do I really need these shoes? I mean, I should, it could go to saving. And then we're like stressed out about every last purchase that we make. We can't even enjoy our money because we're questioning every purchase. And so if I'm spending according to my budget. My budget says I'm spending this much on shoes, and so I'm not going to feel any guilt or have any concern really about buying these shoes. And so that standard, you compare it to, you make, small adjustments, and sometimes you can go big 1 month. Like I remember 1 month I bought like something for my house that was like 4 times my monthly budget. But that doesn't mean I blow my budget. That means, okay, I spent a lot, and then for the next 4 months I'm not really getting anything for the house until I've caught back up. So it's less constraining, I think, than people think it'll be.
Can you also talk about the importance of part of the tracking system is people think, okay, well, my bank's going to pay it and whatever, I see the statement, but there's a comparison there because what might be $30, you get accidentally charged $300.
Right.
And if you're not tracking that, then all of a sudden you've left a large chunk.
Yeah. We tend to think of banks and credit card companies as infallible. They have the latest and greatest technology and smart people working there. They don't ever make any mistakes. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Sometimes you're double charged for something. Maybe a merchant made a mistake. Maybe you're getting dinged for a fee that you don't even know about, that if you knew and just made some kind of switch, you wouldn't be paying that fee. Or, even to the extent of thinking that a check landed in your account and then it never actually lands in your account. And most people don't realize that happened to them because they don't have a system in place to catch it. But that does happen, where you go to the bank, deposit the money, you get a receipt and everything, and then you look at the statement and that money isn't there. How else would you know unless you checked? So, yeah, looking at each thing and making sure that it all makes sense is really important. And when people start to ask me about stocks and taxes, I'm like, how well do you know where your money is going? How much money is leaking on, fees? And some people are like, oh, whatever, it's a small fee, doesn't really matter. But there's a great quote. It's Benjamin Franklin. I hope I can quote it. Small leaks sink great ships. right? So you don't say, oh, whatever, it's $5 a month, doesn't really matter. I mean, think of $5 a month over 10 years.
Right. It'll add up.
Right. And those little things that you resist and that you refuse to do are strengthening your financially fit muscles.
Yeah, and we have it so easy. We have apps out the wazoo. You can get any of your bank apps on your phone and all your credit card apps. You can just download them and see each. I mean, I know I'm an avid. I check it probably way too much, but I'm always checking to see if there's things that are charged. And I've actually caught in some fraudulent charges every now and then, which I think if I wouldn't have caught that then, I would have continued to go on.
Well, some people never check, right? And they don't know that usually you have a certain period of time that you can contest something. 90 days, 100, I think it's 3 months. It might vary by credit card company or by bank. Mm-hmm. But if you don't catch a mistake within that period of time, they may tell you, too bad.
Man.
So that's why
that's a pretty I thought you were going to say like 7 days or something like that. No. 3 months is, to me, relatively generous. Yeah. To be honest.
Yeah.
It definitely is.
So that's why it's something that you do every month, so that you catch these things. And it's interesting that you brought up apps, because I kind of got a lot to say on this. Do we have a second for me to go on this?
Yes, yeah. I mean, that we definitely were going to touch upon apps, so this is a great time to do it.
Okay, cool. So I get lots of questions. What's the best app? As though an app is going to make them financially fit. And here's the analogy that I use. Say you're a doctor and you're going to perform heart surgery. I give you a scapula. That's the tool that you use to cut the person open. I think maybe doctors out there can correct me if I'm wrong. But because you've used the scapula and cut somebody open, have you performed heart surgery?
No.
Right. So people think, I use this tool and that's it. No. You did a part of it. You know, the doctor couldn't do heart surgery unless they created some kind of incision to access it. But that by itself is not the whole deal. That's not the whole system, right? And so I think apps can be great if they work for you. I stay away from making recommendations because different apps work for different people. And I don't use them because it just doesn't go well with the flow of the way that I've set things up. I do use a computer software. It's some complicated accounting software that my mom uses, and she just taught me how to use it, but I would never recommend it for most people. So for that reason, other software and apps might make sense for people. But I want them to understand that those apps are just a tool. They are just a segment. They are a part of the whole system. So don't forget that when you use those apps. And being financially fit is relating well, as weird as this may sound, on an emotional level to money. We don't really think about having relationships with inanimate objects, except our phones. I feel like we're all in a relationship with our phone, and that makes sense to people. But if you tell people that you have a relationship to money, they kind of look at you cross-eyed. But you do, because a relationship is just how you relate, what you think about, what you believe about, what you feel about a person, how you see them, how you perceive them, how you experience them. And that can all be said for money. And most of us don't have a healthy relationship with money. We have inherited, sort of by proxy, by being around it a lot, in childhood, unhealthy habits of our caretakers and our parents, disempowering phrases that they said. Money doesn't grow on trees. We can't afford that. I'm broke. All these phrases that put together make you fear money or make you think it's dirty, wrong, bad, make you uncomfortable with having more than what you need. And so even though you think you want to do well financially and have a lot of money, on some level, you will not let yourself get past the point of, having more than what you need, because that creates a conflict with something that you believe. And so those beliefs will win out. So that's why apps are not the end-all be-all.
Right.
And rant.
What are the levels of financial fitness, and how do you sort of gauge that? And if, let's say, I'm, quote, not making as much and whatever, but I'm starting to adhere to this, am I in a better position than someone who might be actually saving and might be on the surface saving more, quote unquote, but have no clue where their money's actually going and so forth? They just, through luck of the draw, are actually doing correct things.
Yeah, and so that's really not going to work out in the long run. I mean, that kind of chaotic, random approach doesn't generally work out for people. So financial fitness is sort of kind of like the first step. The thing is it's not as complicated and hard as people think. It's just, I think
Practice of it.
the word system scares so many people, right? Because you think of maybe technology, but I try and explain it this way. Imagine that you are an alien from outer space and you land here on Earth and you say, I've heard of this thing called a restaurant and I would like to go to a restaurant. What do I do? How do I do it? And you say, okay, this is how it works. You walk in, you go to the host table, you tell them your name and how many people, they'll tell you how long the wait is. You stand there until they then lead you to your table, they'll hand you menus. Shortly thereafter, a server will come and take your drink order. And then maybe they'll give you some bread. And then you'll sit around and you'll look at your menu and decide the two things, an appetizer and an entree. Okay, do you get where I'm going here? This explanation can take a while. There's a lot of steps to eating at a restaurant. But do you really think that that's a complicated procedure and you stress out every time you go into a restaurant? Like, okay, wait, let me get this straight. Do I tip first or do I order my drink first, right? That's not really a question that you ever ask yourself. You just sort of know how it works. And so, once you know the system, that's exactly how it is. It's something as easy as eating at a restaurant.
Yeah, no, that's a great analogy. Can I jump back? So you had said something about how people are scared about money being bad. And I want to know, I think that credit cards get a very bad omen over them. Like, credit cards are bad, don't ever get them. What is your take on credit cards?
I love credit cards.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. You have to know how to use credit cards.
Right.
Otherwise, the credit card companies are going to use you.
Got it.
And most of us don't know how to use credit cards responsibly, and so the credit card companies use us, and it gets us into a lot of trouble. And so to the point where you think, oh, shoot, they should just be avoided. No, I don't think they should be. But I never carry a balance, that's for sure. This is how a credit card company makes its money. First, every time you swipe or now put your chip in, they charge the merchant, 3%, whatever percent that they charge. And then they charge you interest on balances that roll over. And they know that the amount of money you're going to spend is higher when you use a credit card. I don't remember the percentage, but there's like a significantly larger percentage of money that we spend when we use a credit card versus cash. So if you know those things, that you have a tendency to spend more when you're using credit and that they make money off of your interest and you avoid those things, then you're using credit cards to your advantage. So as long as you're, spending according to your budget, paying your bills, paying them on time, paying them in full, no credit card balances. When the bill is due, pay the whole thing. The problem is that people have begun to use their credit cards as their emergency savings account. You can't be financially fit also without a healthy savings account, especially an emergency account. So that's what happens is like I'm going to put this and that on the credit card, and then before you know it, it snowballs, and then, oh gosh, you need new tires, and then, that's a couple thousand, I don't know. And before you know it,
you're financing one credit card with another.
Right. And swapping out and doing like the downward spiral.
Absolutely. I know. It's
could talk about
please
this
don't
for
stop.
days.
No, I'm like really intrigued.
In terms of getting a financial advisor, do you recommend one? At what level? And are there any things to watch out for that make a good financial advisor?
Yes and yes. Okay. Your very first financial advisor, this is going to sound cheesy, but is you. Only you know your values, your priorities, what's important to you, yada, yada, yada. So that's why you learn about, science of happiness, and then, that part makes me happy, I like that, and this is what I'm going to spend money on so that I'm okay. So you do all of that yourself. Then, once you're financially fit, and you want to go to the investment, protection, whatever level, you can seek out the help of a financial advisor. But you should know a couple of things. Number one, just because somebody is a financial advisor doesn't mean they're good with finances. We know many financial advisors that are a financial mess. Why that is, I don't know, but it's just so. Not for everybody, I'm sure.
Right.
But just because somebody's a financial advisor doesn't mean that their finances are great, right? And just how when you want to go to the gym and be trained, you want to be trained by somebody who is fit, right? Generally, I'd hope so, maybe. The same thing. You'd want an advisor who themselves are fit. It's kind of weird to ask, like, how are your personal finances? But I I don't think I would be afraid to ask that question because I'd want to know that they're good, they're grounded. Second of all, financial advisors, wealth managers, can't remember the other names for these people. And I don't mean to diminish them, condescend, disrespect, but the reality is that they're salespeople. Financial advisor sounds much better than I'm going to sell you an insurance plan that you don't really need, but I'm going to make a shit ton of money off of it, right?
Interesting.
So you have to go in knowing that a financial advisor is a salesperson. Now, and they're going to try and sell you on products that aren't necessarily the best for you, but that pay them the highest commissions. Right? It's freakonomics. Whatever the incentive is, the behavior will follow. So with general financial advisors, that's sort of the way the game is played. But if you find a fiduciary, then that changes the rules a bit. Fiduciary means that somebody has a responsibility to put your interests before theirs. So usually a fiduciary won't make money off commissions. It's just, fee-based.
What about that gray line where there's some fiduciaries who also are brokers? Because there's that gray line.
Well, I think if they're operating, they can be a broker, sure, but if they're a fiduciary, I would think that, that fiduciary duty doesn't go anywhere if you are a broker. So that's what I would do, is I would ask, are you a fiduciary? You can go online and type in fiduciary financial advisors in my area and find out and talk to them, meet with them. See, I know people don't want to go shopping for a financial advisor, but this could be really important, right? Go, not even to interview them, but meet with them and hear their sales pitch. Understand that you're hearing a sales pitch. And see if they're trying to just have you fit into their system. See how many questions they ask you about your goals, and not just the standard, when do you want to retire and what's your risk tolerance. No.
Yesterday, none, by the way.
If they're not asking you about what's important to you, and if they're selling you on life insurance, it can be great, but it also can be a waste. A terrible investment. But life insurance policies pay out huge for financial advisors and brokers and things like that. And so they're incentivized to sell them to people, even to people that don't need them or where a different product would be better. So there's my thing on fiduciaries.
So we have time for one last question, so I'll let you ask it.
I was so into that. I can't even think.
I'll try and go ahead and weave a couple of questions together, and I'll just make one long answer.
I guess my thing is investing in properties. When do you know, is it time to buy a house? Or, if you already have a house, when is it time to kind of make that next step? Is it necessary? Is investing in properties always a good thing? Is it a bad thing? What is your take on that?
Okay, great question. We've been sold on the American dream, you buy your house, but we are finding out now that it is not a good idea for everybody to buy a house. If you have a kind of job that you may be moving across the country, it'd be terrible to be stuck with a house when you have to go live somewhere else. There's lots of reasons why a house may not be a good idea. I could have bought a house, but I really like my teeny, cozy little condo. It's a great location, and because it doesn't have a lot of overhead, I get to use more money to travel, which is something that I value. So owning a house isn't for everybody. Is real estate a good investment? Yeah, I like real estate. It's not for everybody, but it is a good investment. It is how my grandmother went from a single mother of 8 in Mexico, knowing no English and having never gone to school, dying a multimillionaire. And it's how my mom went from that to a whole nother level. She owns a couple of commercial buildings. So the question is, unfortunately, a little too difficult to answer that now. But it's not a great investment for everybody. But if it is for you, do it. You've got to look at the numbers. And I would, if I could, I would spend less money on my primary residence and more money on rental, properties. With the stock market, you put money in companies that, first of all, some of these companies are doing terrible things to people on the planet, and which makes me a little averse to the stock market. But stocks can go up and down, whatever. People will always need a place to rest their head at the end of the day. And so in that sense, real estate is a good idea. But if you get a rental property, that will pay you, over and over. Your house, which people think of as an asset, is not an asset.
Because you shouldn't be leveraging the place where you live.
It's a liability, yeah. So,
Right.
If you have a big house, maybe you're like, okay, I should, leverage it, Airbnb, roommates, and
Rent out the basement.
whatever you can. I mean, most people have an investment property already. It's called their house or their condo, that kind of thing, where you can already use your asset to make you money.
Well, thank you as always, Chelsea. Chelsea Galicia, ladies and gentlemen. Financially Fit is the foundation. Where can people go to find out more information?
financiallyfitfoundation.org. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. This was amazing.
All righty.
I hope we get to
We'll do a
part
follow-up.
2. Okay, deal.
So that was Ally and I's interview with Chelsea Galicia of the Financially Fit Foundation. Definitely check out our website, and thank you guys for joining us. This is just part 1 of 2 of our exploration into the world of personal finance. In our next part, we will interview Katerina Cozias, whose background, apart from hosting, is in business communications. If you have specific questions you'd like to ask, tweet at Ally Nasta and at Phil Svitek using the hashtag OSK. Also, provided for you in the description box are various resources that Ally and I used when doing research into the world of personal finance that you can maybe benefit from. So definitely check those out, and can't wait to have you for part 2 of our exploration in personal finance.